cute little champions. I hope that you are doing as wonderful as you all are, and I welcome you all to the series that is score 99% in 99 days. Today is day 33 and today we are going to finish up this chapter that is control and coordination with the control and coordination in the case of animals. Now, if you're someone who have seen the previous lecture, if you have any doubts regarding control and coordination in the case of plants, you have to tell me in the comment section. Please ask me the doubts in the comment section. Also, if you like the video, if you liked my teaching, do tell me that. Or if you didn't like my teaching, if you want me to improve in certain ways, I am ready to improve myself. You can tell me that as well. And without further delay, let me get into this topic, and I am just wishing you all the luck. Be very positive while you are attending this particular lecture. We are going to make things really easy for you. So over here, children, we are animals. I hope you all know that. Okay, not social animals, we are actually animals. Under animals comes different category. We come under mammals. So basically, we animals are kind of complex. Why do we say complex? Because we have different type of cells. These different type of cells form different type of tissues. Tissues form organs. Organ form organ system. And everything in our body have to be regulated. For example, tomorrow, the cells in my hand says, or probably the muscles in my hand says that I won't be moving up. Will that work? No. So you cannot go according to your own will, but there is something in our body that controls everything. And what is that something? It is two very important systems. One is endocrine system, which involves hormones, darlings. Okay, it involves hormones, and apart from that, we have a nervous system in our body, which consists of neurons, which consists of our brain, our spinal cord, and stuff like that. So today, in the first part of the lecture, we are going to talk about the nervous system, and then we would be going ahead with the endocrine system. Okay, now nervous system I can divide into two parts. I can say there is a central nervous system which includes my brain and the spinal cord. So the brain is up here and the spinal cord is the thing that you see over here. Okay, so brain and the spinal cord, it is a central nervous system. This is center where everything is being processed and things like that. Now there should be someone who could carry this information to different parts of our body. Right? Who is that someone? It is the peripheral nervous system. So all the nerves that arises from your brain, from your spinal cord, they come under this category which is known as peripheral nervous system, which is also responsible for processing as well as transmission of information. So they carry the impulses to and from the CNS. They will carry impulses from towards the brain and the spinal cord and also from the CNS. Now, there are two types of nerves. One is cranial nerves that arises directly from your brain. How many of them do you have in your body? You have 12 pairs of cranial nerves. Okay. Now, there are spinal nerves which arises from your spinal cord, my dear children. Okay. And how many of them do you have? 31 pair. Okay. So, 12 pair of cranial nerves, 31 pair of the spinal nerves makes up the peripheral nervous system, whereas when you talk about the central nervous system, you have the brain and the spinal cord. Cool? Works? Okay. Now, going ahead. So, your brain and the spinal cord are kind of very much protected. Okay, for the spinal cord, you might be knowing there is a very important and very famous thingy which you can feel if you touch your back. What is that, children? It is the vertebral column, or you call, backbone, or what do you call? You call it as backbone as well. So that's something that would be protecting your spinal cord, because that's why we say if there is a spinal cord injury, probably people do not move because it is an area which processes things. Now if that area is damaged, obviously things won't be processed, and hence the nerves arising from that area won't be working together, which is why we say that people might get paralysis and stuff like that, which is why you should be, I'm using which is why very much, but yeah, you should be really careful regarding your back and things like that. So have a good posture always. Do not make your back really weak. Okay. Now for brain also you have so many things. For brain you have a thing which you call as what, children? You call this as skull. But the actual name of the skull is what? Cranium. The actual name of the skull is what? Cranium. Now, you have the skull and then you have the brain. In between that, there is a space which is filled with fluid. What do you call that space as? You call this as cerebrospinal. You call this fluid as cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, which basically reduces the friction. When you have a fluid in between, there are lesser chances of things being attacked directly. Okay, so this thing is there. Apart from that, you have three different layers over here, meninges, okay. You have three different layers in your brain, okay, dura mater, pia mater, this arachnoid and stuff like that as well, which protects it. So there are so many coverings for our brain as well as our spinal cord, because they form a very big part of what? The central nervous system, CNS. Cool. So how does the brain and everything actually work? How do you think everything, why spinal cord is important? What does it have? What is the basic unit of our nervous system? So our basic unit of our nervous system, or basically what is our neurons, what is our brain and everything made up of? The answer is what? You have something which is known as neuron. This is the basic unit of the nervous system. And as you can see over here, this is the whole neuron. This whole neuron is just a cell, children. It is what? A cell. Now a normal cell has its own nucleus. A normal cell has its own nucleus. So over here also, you find this particular region which I am going to shade, okay, which I am going to color over here. This particular region that you see, it is a major part which has the nucleus and everything. What do you call this major part as? You call this as cyton, okay. You call this as, just a second, okay. You call this as cyton or cell body, or you call it as soma. Cyton, cell body, soma. Now here we have a normal cell like this, okay, which has the nucleus and everything, right? But basically in the case of a neuron, what happens is that this particular cell has elongated structures like this. So the cytoplasm is moving towards different sites like this, okay. So these structures that you see over here, what do you call them? You call them as dendrite. And the branches it gives you is known as dendritic branches. So you have cyton. From the cyton you have so many branches coming off, which is known as dendrites, okay. And there is one very long branch that comes off. What do you call this as? You call this as axon, okay. This one very long branch that you see over here, again, why is it too dark? This thing that you see over here, what do you call this as? You call this as axon. Now axon basically again branches off. You call it as axon terminals. What do you call them as? You call them as axon terminals, or you also call it as telodendria. Why am I doing this always? Telodendria. So I have the axon terminals. Now I want your attention over here. The axon terminals, basically they are like this. So if this is a terminal region, they will be having certain knobs like this at the end. They will be having certain knobs like this at the end. And what do you call these knobs as? Which you cannot possibly see it here clearly, but if I zoom into it, you would be able to see it. So it looks like this. If you see over here, there are certain knobs at the end. What do you call these knobs as? You would call them as synaptic knobs, okay. You would give them a name, and that name is what? Synaptic knobs. So I'm writing it over here. Synaptic knobs. Why synaptic knobs are important? Basically, when a neuron is active, I won't say how it is active and all right now, okay, just listen to me. When a neuron is said to be active at this point of time, it sends the signal throughout its body, and when it reaches a synaptic knob, okay, the synaptic knob is made to release a set of chemicals which is stored in there. And what do you call this set of chemicals as, children? You call this set of chemicals as neurotransmitters. You would call them as neurotransmitters. These are nothing but chemicals. For example, dopamine is a neurotransmitter. So this neurotransmitter which is being released, it will go to the next neuron. The next neuron will also be having dendrite, and the dendrites will be having certain receptors on them like this. So the neurotransmitter which have come from here, from this side, will be going and binding on it, and then the signal over here will be starting. So basically, suppose dopamine is being released. Dopamine is the happy neurotransmitter. It causes happiness. So basically now there will be certain hormones being released which would again make you happy, or certain things happening in your body which will at last make you happy. So there are neurotransmitters being released, such as, for example, now you are in a scary situation. At this point of time, you need to have adrenaline being released. You need to have adrenaline being released, which is again acting as a neurotransmitter. It's a hormone, but it also acts as a neurotransmitter. Now when adrenaline is released, it will go and act on your heart, makes it pump really fast, which is why you get scared, which is why your heart rate becomes so fast. Why does it actually have to make your heart beat so fast? Because you need to pump a lot of blood, because probably in this scary situation you might have to run, and for running you need energy. So when the blood is being pumped, you are providing energy in the form of basically oxygen. The oxygen is being distributed throughout your body so that cellular respiration can happen everywhere and enough amount of energy can be received. So this is a mechanism of how things work in the case of our body. Okay, and the basic unit of our nervous system becomes what? A neuron. So neuron has a basic cell body, or cyton or soma. It has certain branches which you call as dendrites. Dendrites would be having certain receptors on it, okay, and towards this side you have axon. Axon also have terminal region which are known as axon terminals. At the end you have synaptic knobs. In the synaptic knobs, what are there? Neurotransmitters are there, which are nothing but chemicals. This neurotransmitters goes and acts on the next neuron, or probably on a muscle, or probably on a gland, and that's how things work in the case of human body. So it can be a next neuron, it can be a muscle, it can be another gland, anything could be there at the end. Okay, works. Now I told you basically signals are being transported. How does basically signal get transported in the case of a neuron, and what do you call the signal as? Basically you say it's an electrical impulse. What do you say? It's an electrical impulse. An electrical impulse happens when probably this was a neuron, suppose this is the axon of the neuron, okay. This is the cell body and stuff like that. Over here, it had enough amount of sodium. Suppose there was enough amount of what? Sodium ions here, okay. But when the receptors get active because of a neurotransmitter, what happens is that these sodium ions which were outside, they will now get inside the neuron like this. They will get inside the neuron like this. So initially suppose this is sodium ions or positive charged ions, okay, and inside if the neuron had minus 70 millivolts, as in basically the charge inside was negative. But now when the neurotransmitter came and attached, what happens? There were so many ion channels that opened up. There are so many what, children? Ion channels that opened up, and the sodium ions which were outside, they got inside. When they get inside, what will happen? This minus 70 millivolts potential difference that you see over here, this would be changing to something less negative, probably minus 50, and then minus 30, and then probably something positive. So this change that happens is known as electrical impulse. So electrical impulse, also known as action potential, is a brief rapid change in the electric potential across the cell membrane of a neuron due to movement of ions. So there will be change of what, say, charges, and basically this moves on like this. For example, over here it is positive, now there it is negative. Again so many things will, again it will be positive, negative, positive, negative. It goes on like that. Okay, there are so many ion channels which open up throughout the way to make it balanced. Okay, and this is how the charges move, this is how the impulse move, and later when the impulse reaches at the end, that's when the synaptic knob will be releasing the neurotransmitters. So I know I might not have explained in detail to you, but this is what you need to understand. Okay, we should not be going in detail. Now if you're someone who want to go in detail, you can put it down in the comment section. I'll be definitely making a separate video for that as well if you want, only if you want. Okay, why I'm not telling you? Because you might be already in this, what say, feeling that there is so less time to study. If you're getting confused, it won't help you. So that is why I'm not going in detail, but just understand, whenever there is a change in the ions, charges, okay, within the neuron, outside the neuron, the thing that comes is known as electrical impulse. So an electrical impulse, also known as an action potential, is a brief rapid change in the electrical potential across the cell membrane of a neuron due to the movement of ions. And basically this electrical impulse is the one that will make the synaptic knob release the neurotransmitters, which would later go and do the same effect there in the next neuron or the gland or something else. Okay, now over here I have mentioned each parts. Dendrites, they are protoplasmic projections of the cell body. What do you mean protoplasmic projections? Basically the cytoplasm and everything, they project in different directions. That is what you call as protoplasmic projection. Okay, now dendrites contain receptor sites for neurotransmitters, allowing them to receive and transmit signals. I already told you, if this is a dendrite, it will be having what? Receptors for what, children? Neurotransmitters to come and attach over here. Next thing, you have cyton, cell body or soma. So it is a central part of the neuron that contains the nucleus and various organelles. Please remember that neurons do not have centrioles. Okay, neurons do not have centrioles. And why do you think we need centrioles? All the cells in our body have centrioles, and centriole is that something which would help in cell division. It would be the one that would help in cell division. If now in the neuron, centriole is not there, will it be able to divide itself? No, which is why we say that after a point of time we tend to forget things, because our neurons are getting damaged and there is no new generation of neurons being formed over there. Once died, they are dead. There is no option for them to divide again. So that option is not there for neurons, which is why we say that treating all the neurological diseases, it becomes a lot more difficult because of the same reason, because the neuron cells are not regenerative, they do not regenerate. Okay, so it is responsible for what? Cell body is responsible for receiving the signal from the dendrite and transmitting them to the axon, because this is the middle area, right? After that you have axon in the form of action potential or nerve impulse if the signals are strong. So this action potential or nerve impulse happens, this change of ions will be happening when initially there are change of ions, and it brings out a huge change in the potential. That's when there is a huge change in potential, that's when this impulse would be moving ahead, or else this impulse will be dissoluted here itself. When it is way too much, that's when this impulse will be moving ahead. What do I mean by way too much? That means the ions are coming inside in way too much quantity. The negative charge which was there, it is getting decreased, it is moving towards positive side. That's what I mean by a strong impulse. Okay, that's what I mean by strong impulse, and these strong impulse only would be going ahead and making other ion channels open up later on, creating the whole cycle. Okay, so and it is also cyton itself is responsible for maintaining the cell's metabolic function, since it has the nucleus and the organelles. So all the metabolic function, that is breakdown, making of things, everything happens over here itself, because nucleus is there. So yes, now the axon. Axon is long slender projection with usually knob-like terminal ends. The cell membrane of axon is known as axolemma, and its cytoplasm is known as axoplasm. So you have a separate name for it. The cell membrane that surrounds it is known as axolemma. The cytoplasm, the inner content which is there, it is known as axoplasm. Now that's not very much important for you who are just referring to your NCERT, it's just fine. You can remember it, that's all. Now what do the axon do? They carry electrical impulses, or basically action potentials, away from the cell body to the axon terminals, causing the release of neurotransmitters contained in the presynaptic knobs of the axon terminal. Presynaptic knob, as in, for example, this is the neuron's end. These are the knobs. Over here you have another neuron. Over here you would be having another neuron, right? So this space that comes between one neuron end and another neuron's beginning, what do you call this as? You call this space as synapse. You call this space as synapse. Okay, and it is responsible for basically transmitting things. So the thing that comes before it will be known as presynaptic knob, the thing that comes after will be known as postsynaptic neuron. Okay, postsynaptic neuron. Works? Chalo. Next, so synapse, it is the minute gap. For example, this is the two neurons. Over here, the zoomed in version, as you can see, this area that you see is known as the synapse. It is a minute gap between the terminal portion of the axon of one neuron and the dendrite of the next neuron. The neurotransmitter passes through this space to move to the next neuron. So neurotransmitters which are being released in the postsynaptic knob, it will be moving to the next neuron with the help of this. Works. Now what are neurotransmitters? I already told you, but please remember it, questions have come, you have to define it as well. So over here, neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that transmit signals between neurons or from the neurons to other target cells such as muscle cells or gland cells. So what are they? They are chemical messengers that are transmitting signals between the neurons, okay, or from the neuron to what? Other cells, other muscle cells, other gland cells and stuff like that. Example, dopamine, adrenaline, all these things. Now some neurons, if you have seen, it looks like this. Okay, so there is a layer of cells which is there, which are known as Schwann cells. Okay, there are cells which are known as Schwann cells. Okay, and additionally the axon might have an extra layer which is known as myelin sheath as well. Not all neurons have it, only some have it, and this myelin sheath is actually formed by the Schwann cells itself. But again, as I said, we do not have to go in detail. Over here in between the Schwann cells, Schwann came from the person who discovered it. Okay, now in between that space, in between two Schwann cells, the space that comes is known as nodes of Ranvier. Do not remember Ranveer Singh over here, please Ranvier. Okay, nodes of Ranvier is also there. So this is found in some neurons only. Whenever you want a fast exchange of things, okay, that's when you would be having myelinated sheet, okay, or myelinated neurons. Why? Because the ion channels would be opening up here, 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 here. So the neuron signals basically jump from here, 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 here. So there are no ion channels that open up here. So the signals would be really, really fast. I know you might not be understanding it in very much detail, but yes, I think this is not there in your NCERT. So, but still I am telling you in general. Why? Because you never know what could come out of your NCERT as well. Okay, so just have an idea of things. I'm not saying remember it for a longer run, just have an idea of this can happen, this is something, this type of thing is there. Okay, this could happen in any neuron. Fine. Now comes a very, very, very important part of this particular chapter, which is the reflex arc and reflex action. What do you mean by reflex action? This is a very fun topic. Reflex action, I can say it's a sudden action. Okay, it's a sudden action, an involuntary action probably, most of the times, where basically because of the stimulus, because of something, I am going to show a response. For example, there's a hot pan kept. So this hot pan is the stimulus. Over here, the heat is the stimulus. I touch it. I put my hands away. This is known as reflex action. But the whole process which revolves around it, from me touching my hand to the signals being transmitted to my tips of the fingers and then moving towards my central nervous system, and then back from my central nervous system, a neuron comes and makes me pull my hand. This whole arc that is being made, it is known as what, children? It is known as the reflex arc. The whole cycle that basically my neuron has to pass through is known as reflex arc. So reflex action is simply known as a reflex. It's an automatic and rapid response. Okay, it cannot be slow response. Can it be slow, children? Just think of it to be slow. Okay, so I touch it and then I keep on touching it and just not move my hand, then that's a problem. I could burn my fingers, right? So it is an automatic and rapid response to a stimulus without the will of an animal. So it's not in the will of an animal. They just do it. Now, reflex arc is the nerve pathway involved in reflex action. So in this whole process, the nerve pathway which is there, it is known as what, children? A reflex action. Sorry, reflex arc. Now, this is how reflex arc looks. So over here, let's run. So this is a stimulus. For example, there is a thorny plant. We have sensory receptors. Okay, we do have sensory receptors. What happens is that the sensory receptors would be sending signals to a neuron which is known as a sensory neuron. Please remember it. Sensory neuron, which is also known as efferent neuron. Efferent as in it is going to bring something. Come. Like that. Like that. Okay. So sensory neuron, efferent neuron is there. So first we have receptors. First thing, we have sensory receptors. From the receptors, what do we have? We have a neuron that goes like this, and this neuron is going where? To our brain or what? No, children, it goes to our spinal cord. It goes to our spinal cord. Now, in the spinal cord, there is a neuron, okay, which is known as interneuron, because it is between something, okay, and it is also known as relay neuron. Again, in relay also you need a person who could take the battle and run, right? So over here there is a person, okay, there is a neuron which would transmit the signal somehow. So it is known as interneuron or it is known as relay neuron, which is entirely inside your spinal cord. This is what, children? This is the spinal cord. Now I'll answer a question, that is, even though if you are not asking, you are not able to ask, that is, why does the signal not directly go to the brain? Children, the brain is a thinking part of our body. If it goes to the brain, there will be a lot of time that it requires to give a response. which obviously would be very bad for my safety. So what happens is that it goes to the spinal cord because it would be capable of sending a faster response. But this information that something like this has happened goes to our brain as well. So for example, in my life, I'll tell you one thing and then we'll go ahead, okay? So in my life, once what happened is that there was a jar being kept, not a glass, a jar being closed jar, thermo jar being kept. In that, there was normal water, okay? It was not hot, it was not cold, it was just normal water. So that was there almost around 9:30 p.m. Okay, I drank and I went and I came back to drink again like almost after 10 minutes. But the problem was that it had a nice amount of insulation. I couldn't feel anything from outside. So I just put it like this. Okay, I drank the water like this and then I came to know it's hot water. It was boiled water that was kept because they thought that no one would be coming and drinking overnight because it was just kept there for the morning purpose. For the morning people who want to drink hot water, they can drink it like that. So that was the purpose. But I drank it. And my tongue and all, it got really, I don't want to say it. So anyways, something really bad happened. Now from that point onwards, I am really careful. Okay, at that my initial response was I spit it. Though I spit the water. Now that is a reflex action that I show. Over here, if I send to my brain, probably I would have think. Now that's a second scenario. There's a second scenario which I actually did. Okay, that was instead of spitting, because it was not my home. Okay, I was too conscious. I don't know what should I say. I went in search for a wash basin to spit it. By that time, my tongue had gone, I won't say tongue cannot be going mad, but still something really bad happened. Okay, so over here, I thought that means it is in my will. I did not show the reflex action to spit it. Okay, that would have been the reflex action. But over here, I waited. I went to the wash basin to spit it. That means I was involving my brain over there. And what was the result? I burnt my tongue. I burned my tongue. So over here, if you wait for your brain to respond, it might take a longer time because you're thinking about the consequences as well. Oh, this is someone else's house. I should not be spitting over here. But yes, that is does not make any sense. That's nonsense, right? So over here, sometimes we have to leave our consciousness and rely on what a reflex action by our spinal cord. So what happens is that now the next thing is that at that point of time, this information, even though if I did the reflex action to spit it, but the next moment this information is passed to my brain as well. So every time when I drink something, now I will be really, really careful. So this information is stored in our brain for our survival, for increased survival. So definitely the reflex action, even though it directly involves the spinal cord, the information is passed to our brain as well. And it is kept like that. So that next time it may not happen. Okay. So that is a fun story. I don't know, fun or sad, I don't know what, but yes, that's a story. So be very cautious. So sensory neuron or afferent neuron is there. Then you have interneuron or relay neuron. After that, you have a neuron which is known as motor neuron. Okay, it is known as motor neuron because it will make you move. You can remember like that. Make you do things. So motor neuron is there, which is also known as, if this is afferent neuron, this will be known as efferent neuron, E. This will be known as efferent neuron. And this efferent neuron will be going and affecting an effector organ. For example, over here, it is the muscle of the hand. It will go and affect, it will go to send a signal to the effector organ, that is a muscle over here, and make it contract such that I pull up my hand away from the thorn. So this is a reflex action and that happens really, really fast. This thing that you see over here, it is a reflex arc which involves receptor, then a sensory neuron or afferent neuron, and then you have interneuron or relay neuron, and then you have a motor neuron or efferent neuron, and then you have an effector organ as well. Works? Cool? No. So reflex arc, the parts. The first part is receptor, as I told you. Receptor molecule generally is a protein that receives signal for a cell. There are different type of receptors. Photoreceptors are there. Now this is an important thing. Again, they ask you what are the receptors found on your tongue, in your nose and stuff like that. So you should be knowing it. Okay, so photoreceptors are the one that is present over here in the eyes. They detect the light. Okay, then you have mechanoreceptors. It is the mechanical stimuli such as pressure, touch, whatever is there, it will be understanding that. Thermoreceptor, which will be detecting the temperature. Okay, gustatory receptor, this is important, gustatory. Okay, this is a gustatory, you can remember like that. Okay, but it is gustatory. Gustatory is there for your taste on your tongue. Olfactory, oil, you can remember like oil. You smell oily food. So basically olfactory receptors is for the smell. Phonoreceptors is for the sound. So how many receptors? Photoreceptors, mechanoreceptors, touch and everything, thermoreceptors, temperature, gustatory receptors for taste, olfactory for nose, that is smell, and then you have phonoreceptors to detect the sound. Please remember, this is a very important piece of information that I am sharing right now. Works? Chalo. After receptors, I told you there are certain things like this. Okay, there is sensory neuron, also known as efferent neuron. This type of neuron detects a stimulus. Okay, it transmits the sensory information from a sensory receptor toward your central nervous system, which includes your spinal cord. Now, also interneuron, also called as radial neuron. This neuron is located entirely within the CNS, or I can say within the spinal cord. Please mention like that. It receives the sensory information from the sensory neuron and processes it. Yes, it got it from the sensory neuron, it will process it and then send signal to motor neuron, also known as efferent neuron. This neuron receives signal from the interneuron. It transmits the appropriate response to an effector, typically a muscle or a gland, causing a reflex action to occur. Cool? Chalo. So this is the reflex arc, effector. Steps involved in the same thing that I already told you. You can just form it in the form of steps and you can write it if you want. You get the PDF. Okay, please click on the link that is given below. I think you can, if there is a link, it will be for downloading the PDF of the class. Or if you have enrolled for the course and stuff like that, which is a free course, you will be getting the PDF in your mobile phone itself, okay, via the email. So fill the form. Now, one important thing, yes, so basically some of our receptors are kind of jinxed together, For example, you might have seen, if our nose is not working properly, we might not be able to taste things better. So that happened when coronavirus hit. No, at that point of time, the nose was not working well, so people were not able to taste as well. So why is that so? So basically, our sense of taste and sense of smell are closely interconnected. When we chew food, volatile components released from the food, volatile as in gaseous components which is released from the food, travels through the back of the throat to the olfactory receptors in the nasal passage. So suppose this is our nose and then we have our mouth, which looks like this. Okay, why it looks like they have a big mouth? Just a second. So this is the nose, and then over here, this is the mouth, this is the nostril. You see, this is known as pharynx. So basically, whatever food we eat, the volatile components which is there, the gaseous stuff which is there, it could be traveling from here to there. And here, what do we have in the nasal passage? What do we have? We have the olfactory receptors which could get active. So these receptors helps us to detect various aromatic compounds in the food, contributing to the richness of the flavor. So together, the gustatory and olfactory receptors give the food its actual taste. So please remember that it's there in your NCERT. If at all it comes, it will be really important for you. Now comes a very important question. Why do you think there is a need of a reflex action? So first thing, reflex action, it would help in initiating what? An immediate response. I want a faster response in my body, I should be having reflex action. Apart from that, it is a survival strategy in the case of human beings or any animal. Right? Obviously, if reflex action is not there, probably I might not survive a lot of things. Okay, probably I might not survive. For example, if I see a vehicle coming in front and I am not moving, I might kill myself. So this is basically me moving away from that side is a reflex action. So it is helping me in increasing the survival mechanism. So reflex actions are evolutionary adaptations that have developed to increase an organism's chance of survival. So please write these 2 points, okay, very, 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 very important. Now, they always ask for what? For labeling this thing. So this could be a question where they could ask you to label stuff. So before getting into that, I want to tell you a thing in brief. That is, if you're someone who is very much confused about what stream you should be choosing after 10th, then my dear children, there is Diksha Scholastic Aptitude Test. The link is given in the description box. You can click on that. Okay, there will be a 60-minute lecture. Okay, after the lecture, on the basis of it, there will be an aptitude test, and on basis of the aptitude test, you would be having a one-on-one counseling with a counselor, and that person would be suggesting the best stream that could be useful for you. Got it? So that's all for you. Now, if you're someone who is interested in that, definitely you should be trying that out. Cool. Now, so over here, let me teach you how to label it. So this X is going to this CNS. So this X has to be what, children? The sensory neuron. Now, over here they are mentioning Y. What will be the Y that will be going from this from the spinal cord? This will be the motor neuron. Similarly, if they are asked you about this, this is the effector organ. If they have asked you about this, this is the relay neuron. This is how you need to answer. Cool? Works? Chalo. Now the next part of the story is the brain. Okay, so we learned the importance of spinal cord in there. We should be knowing about the brain also. In brain, you have certain segments. You have three of them, which is known as forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Among them, the biggest one is what? Your forebrain. This is the largest one. This is first in this category. The second largest one becomes your hindbrain. The smallest one becomes your midbrain. Cool. So your brain looks something like this, where half of the portion is taken by the forebrain itself. Okay, so this half, suppose it is being taken by the forebrain. Your midbrain takes a very little part, which could include actually just this particular region, and then everything else is a part of your hindbrain. Okay, now we have to study about each part. So forebrain, in the forebrain you might have seen there are some noodly structure that you see over here. What do you call this as? This is a part of something that is the largest part of the forebrain, which is known as the cerebrum. Okay, it is known as cerebrum. Now cerebrum comes in two hemispheres. There is one part over here, one part over here. So I will say it has two hemispheres, and I would call it as cerebral hemispheres. What do I call it? I call this as cerebral hemispheres. Now if it is big, then it might have some very important things to do, right? So it is the thinking part of the brain, children. Please remember, cerebrum is the thinking part of the brain. So whatever includes the thinking, whenever you want to have a good problem solving skills and language, remember language and have something, all this thinking or intellectual activity thingy, it becomes a part of your cerebrum, which is the largest part of your brain and the largest part of your forebrain as well. So please remember, it's the thinking and the problem solving language, all the intellectual thinking kind of thing of our brain. Now after this comes thalamus. Okay, thalamus is located near the center of the brain. What does it act as? It is acting as a relay station, so that all the sensory information could pass through to different areas of our brain. So it's like a relay pit stop where everything passes through. Okay, now you have hypothalamus. So hypothalamus means it will be below the thalamus. Hypo as in below the thalamus. What does it do? It regulates all of physiological properties. For example, I am hungry, I am thirsty, there is sexual drive happening, there is sleep cycle getting disturbed. So all this thing comes from our hypothalamus. So it regulates all the various physiological functions like body temperature, hunger, thirst, sleep, sex drive. Everything would be controlled by the hypothalamus. So what all part are there in our forebrain, children? First is the largest part, that is the cerebrum. Cerebrum has two things, that is cerebral hemispheres. It is the major thinking part, so it involves problem solving features, language, remembering things, everything. Okay, thalamus is kind of relay station. Okay, and hypothalamus is basically below the thalamus, and it is regulating the physiological functions of our body like hunger, thirst and stuff like that. Cool. So done. So forebrain is done. Going ahead, we have midbrain. So midbrain, it provides a passage for different neurons. Again, it is also acting as relay station, and it is there involved in reflex action. Actually, there are two types of reflex action. One that you saw, that is involving the spinal reflex. Okay, then there is a cerebral, cranial reflex action as well. So we don't go in detail about that, but you should be knowing. Okay, so there is a reflex action which involves your brain as well, even though it is not generally involved. So that is being controlled by our midbrain. And all our reflex action which is done by spinal cord, the information is being given to the midbrain as well. Okay, so it is responsible for pain perception, reflex action and stuff like that. Midbrain is not that very important. The cerebrum and something that is known as cerebellum is very much important for you to remember. Okay, so midbrain is there for pain perception, for basically acting like a passageway for all the neurons to go and come. Okay, and now we have the third part of our brain, which is known as hindbrain. So hindbrain as in the back of the brain. Okay, hind. So over here we have cerebellum, and cerebellum, you tell me the function of it without seeing. Obviously, if a person is alcoholic, they drink alcohol, this alcohol is going to affect the cerebellum of the brain majorly. Why do I say so? Why do I say so? Or basically, I'd say the person moves like this, right? Why? Because cerebellum probably could be controlling the balance, the movement, the posture and everything. So when people drink alcohol, it is going to affect the cerebellum, which is why they are not able to maintain the posture. Okay, so this is the second largest part of the brain, and it comes to look like this. So over here, I'll just remove all this thing. So this part that you see from here to here, this is your cerebellum, my dear children. So after the cerebrum, you have the cerebellum, which is the largest part, and the cerebellum is responsible for what? The posture and everything. How do I remember it? Always remember, in cerebellum, there is 2L which looks like straight. So it's for my posture. It's for my posture. That's how I remember. Okay, cerebrum does not have an L. Over here you have an L, and that shows what? Posture. That's how I remember. You can use my trick, or you can create your own way to remember. So cerebellum is essential for coordinating and regulating movements, balance, posture, other motor functions as well. Please remember that. Now apart from that, you have something that is known as pons. Okay, P-O-N-S. It controls the breathing. So pons basically contains important respiratory centers that help regulate the rhythm and the depth of breathing. So it is known as, it is a respiratory center that will allow me to breathe, the depth of my breath and everything is being controlled by that. It works in conjunction with medulla oblongata to ensure automatic and rhythmic nature of breathing. So medulla, it is like a personal secretary to the medulla oblongata. You might have seen it. People, when they get hit in the medulla oblongata, they instantly die, because medulla oblongata is very much important. It is both the the breathing and the cardiovascular activity center. Okay, so your heart rate, everything is being controlled by the medulla oblongata. Okay, both the breathing and the cardiovascular activities are being controlled by medulla oblongata. So medulla coordinates various reflexes, including coughing, sneezing, swallowing, vomiting. So all your involuntary things, you can remember like that. All your involuntary, is this voluntary, children? No, this is involuntary. Coughing, sneezing, swallowing, vomiting, all of them. Basically swallowing is voluntary, but still. Okay, rest of the things, if you see, they are involuntary, so you can remember this involuntary stuff is being controlled by your medulla oblongata, including your cardiovascular activity, which is also not a voluntary function, right? This is not something that you can control. For example, I think that I won't be beating my heart today. That does not work like that. Probably if I think like that, then I'm gone, right? So medulla oblongata is for controlling all the involuntary things in your body. Cool. So cerebellum, pons, medulla oblongata. This is a part of your hindbrain. Your forebrain had cerebrum and thalamus and hypothalamus. Cool. Please remember cerebrum and cerebellum. It's very, very, very important. Now, cranium refers to the skull, the bony structure that encases and protects the brain. I already told you. Okay. The meninges are the set of 3 protective membranes that surround and support the brain and the spinal cord within the cranial cavity and the vertebral column. Okay, so basically the meninges includes dura mater, thea mater, arachnoid, Okay, and also please remember you have cerebrospinal fluid as well. Works? Cool. Chalo. Spinal cord, I already told you, spinal cord is a long, thin, tubular bundle of nerve tissue. Okay, it is a bundle of nerve tissue that will be extending from the brain stem. Brain stem means you are talking about the pons and the medulla. So this part, no, this is your brain stem, which includes the pons and then it includes the medulla. So this is your brain stem, which goes directly in contact with the spinal cord as well. So it helps in relaying sensory signals that allows us to perceive the environment, controls voluntary and involuntary movements, it helps in facilitating the reflex actions. So it's for all the things, spinal cord, okay, for receiving relaying the sensory signals, okay, for basically controlling the involuntary and voluntary movements, and for facilitating the reflex action. Now with this we are completing the brain and we are getting into the next topic, that is what? Endocrine system. Endocrine as in what? You're talking about your hormonal system. Cool. So your hormonal system, basically it consists of endocrine glands that controls the body by releasing the chemical messenger known as hormones. So endocrine system are going to release certain chemical things that are known as what, children? Hormones. And they are ductless glands. What do you mean by ductless glands? So for example, this is a gland. It does not have a duct to release the stuff to the blood vessels. It does not have a duct to release the things to the blood vessels. Instead, the things directly move from here to here depending upon the concentration, stuff like that. This is known as a ductless gland. So endocrine system, always remember, endocrine system is made up of endocrine glands, which are also known as ductless glands, which secretes hormones directly into the blood rather than into the ducts. Okay, the site that responds to these hormones are known as target sites. So for example, the insulin is going to go to my liver, and there it is going to convert the glucose into glycogen and stuff like that. So basically that site is a target site for that particular hormone. Always remember, hormones are also known as chemical messengers because they are sending the messages that, hey, you have to break down the glycogen to glucose. Hey, you have to make glucose from the you have to make glycogen from the glucose, stuff like that. So these messages are being transported with the help of chemicals, which is why they are known as chemical messengers. And always remember, endocrine glands are ductless glands. This is a question that comes. Okay, so here is the difference between exocrine and endocrine gland. Exocrine gland is for releasing enzymes. Okay, and endocrine gland is there for releasing hormones. So over here you see there's a gland being made and there's a duct over here through which the things are being released directly. So this is what? The skin surface. So over here this is a duct through sweat gland through which things would be moving out. Over here if you see, this is a gland, and from here the things are moving directly into the blood vessels. And the blood is being carrying all the things. So this is ductless gland, that is in the case of endocrine. Okay. Now you have different type of glands over here. Let's have a focus. So in our brain itself, we have a pineal gland. Hypothalamus is also said to be a gland. Okay, hypothalamus, which is a part of the brain, it is also known to be a gland. And then below it you have pituitary gland. What do you have? Pituitary gland. So you have pineal gland, you have hypothalamus, and you have pituitary gland in the brain itself. Pineal gland, sometimes people do not explain it very much. It's not very prominently explained, but yes. Then over here we have the thyroid gland. Okay, then we go ahead in the chest region. In the chest region, children, over here. Okay, over here you would be having something that is known as thymus. What is it known as? Thymus. Where is it? For example, this is the ribs. It is attached to something that is known as the sternum. So behind this sternum you have something which is known as the thymus. Now going ahead, you have pancreas, which is a gland. Pancreas is a heterocline gland. Pancreas is a heterocline gland. That means it releases enzymes as well as hormones. So it is acting as both exocrine and endocrine gland. Okay, it is acting as both exocrine and endocrine gland, which is why I call pancreas as heterocline gland. Now on the top of the kidneys there are two glands, actually a pair of gland. What do you say? It's a paired gland. And what do you call this paired gland as? Adrenal. Renal as in for kidney. Adrenal as in above the kidney. So adrenal gland is there. Okay, what do we have, children? Adrenal gland. And then after that we have ovaries and we have testes. In the case of females you have ovaries. In the case of men they have what? Testes. So these are the glands that we have. In our brain we have 3: pineal gland, hypothalamus, and then what? Pituitary gland. Okay, they are the important glands. These glands are the one that basically controls the action of all the other glands. Okay, now we have thyroid, which is over here, thymus, which is over here behind the sternum, and then you have pancreas. Then you have adrenal gland above the kidney in a paired format. Okay, and then you have ovaries and the testes. Now we are going to study about each of them. So there's a dictatorship going on. Dictatorship, you know, there is only one king over there and that guy will be ruling everything. So dictatorship is happening by something that is known as hypothalamus. Hey pituitary bro, what did I say? Hey pituitary bro, do what I say. That is dictatorship. So pituitary says, do I have a choice over here? Sadly, but it does not have a choice. Basically what happens is that hypothalamus controls the secretion of hormones from the anterior and posterior lobes of pituitary gland. So that means pituitary has an anterior lobe and a posterior lobe, and both the secretions of these particular glands are being controlled by this guy, that is hypothalamus. So there are hypothalamus, if it releasing hormones, these releasing hormones will go act on the pituitary and pituitary will be releasing certain hormones. If it is releasing inhibiting hormones, this pituitary would be inhibiting the secretion of lot of other things. Okay, so that is how things work. So this guy is a middle guy. This guy will later go and act on other guys also. Got it? So basically hypothalamus is the pardada, then pituitary is the dada. You can think like that. Okay, so hypothalamus controls the secretion of hormones from the anterior and the posterior lobes of the pituitary gland. Now anterior, suppose it's anterior. Usually what all it releases, let's see. So it releases growth hormones. It's a very important thing. Okay, it releases growth hormones. Now growth hormones, you know, it will promote and regulate the growth of an organism. If someone is deficient in the growth hormone, they will have a disease which is known as, a condition which is known as dwarfism. You might have seen dwarf people. This is because they have a condition that is known as dwarfism, because in their body the growth hormone is not being released much. There is a deficiency in that. Now over secretion of it causes gigantism, where the people are very tall. Okay, what is it? Gigantism. So growth hormone is being released by anterior side of the pituitary gland. Okay, now you have thyroid hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, not thyroid hormone. This thyroid stimulating hormone will be going and acting on the thyroid gland such that it will release the hormones from there. There is thyroid inhibiting hormone as well, which will inhibit, but that will only happen when this guy releases inhibiting hormones. Okay, so thyroid stimulating hormone, it controls the functioning of the thyroid glands. Then there is follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone plays a major role in the case of spermatogenesis and also in the case of oogenesis. Same with LH, that is luteinizing hormone, also plays a major role in the case of spermatogenesis as well as in the case of oogenesis, as in the formation of sperms and the formation of ova. So this is the role of the pituitary gland, the anterior one. Okay, growth hormones, please remember, it's a very important thing given in your NCERT. Deficiency causes dwarfism and the oversecretion causes gigantism. Okay, thyroid stimulating hormone is there, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone is also there. Now the next we have posterior pituitary. Okay, posterior pituitary releases two things. One is vasopressin or antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic, as in you do not want to lose too much of water through the urine. Through the urine, you do not want to lose the water. So for that, what do we have in our body? We have vasopressin or antidiuretic hormone. So when the body needs to conserve water, such as during periods of dehydration or low fluid intake, when we are dehydrated, when you are not drinking enough water, vasopressin level rises. This hormone prompts the kidney to reabsorb much water. It tells the kidney, hey nephron, please take in more amount of water, take it back from the urine and let the urine be concentrated. It's okay. Let there be less water in the urine. Take back the water. So reducing the urine output and helping to prevent excessive water loss. So this is the function of vasopressin or antidiuretic hormone. Now apart from that, you also have something that is known as oxytocin. Oxytocin, what does it do? It stimulates uterine contraction. It helps in ejection of milk. Uterine contraction, you know, the baby, it has to move out. The baby has to move out. So for that, what does it have? Basically, uterine contraction should be there, and for that they have oxytocin. So it helps in the ejection of milk as well later on after pregnancy. Okay, so this is the role of posterior part of the pituitary. Now in your book, this is being mentioned, so this is very, very, very much important. Okay, so pituitary gland with growth hormones, please remember. Now pineal gland, which is there again in our brain, it helps in controlling the biological clock, the gonadal development. What do you mean by gonadal development? The development of ovaries and the testes, which would later form the gametes. Apart from that, the biological clock, as in my sleep cycle, everything is being maintained by the pineal gland. Now pineal gland again is not something very much important. It's not given in your prominently in your NCERT, but you should be knowing it. Now again, something that is important is the thyroid gland. Now thyroid, basically there are two hormones, children. One is a hormone that has 4 iodine molecules in it. Another one has 3 iodine molecules in it. So you call it thyroxine, that has 4 iodine, and triiodothyronin for T3, that is this hormone which has 3 iodine molecules. Tri-iodo, as in 3 iodine, thyronin, that is the last word. Triiodothyronin, that is T3, and thyroxine, that has 4 iodine molecules. So what does it do? It helps in metabolic regulation, growth and development. So I'll say thyroid gland is a gland that is a all-rounder. It controls a lot of things in your body. It controls your metabolic rate, your breakdown of food, your breakdown of energy, whatever thing is there. It controls a lot of things, which is why it is very much important. And most of us are deficient in the hormones being released by it because we are not taking proper salt. Okay, we should be having iodized salt. What, children? We should be having iodized salt. So iodine is a very important component of this hormone, that is thyroxine. You saw 4 iodine molecules are there, 3 iodine molecules over here. So we need iodine. So if you're not taking enough amount of iodized salt, then you might develop this particular disease, that is what? Thyroid disease, hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism if it's way too much. Okay, so I also have hypothyroidism. I take medicines for that, not because I might have not taken things, but because there can be genetic reasons as also. You get it? So note, for the formation of thyroid hormone, we need iodine. So iodized salt is an effective and efficient way to prevent iodine deficiency and thereby helps in the production of thyroid hormone. Deficiency of iodine leading to insufficient thyroid hormone production leads to what? Goiter. So you might have seen people have a very swollen thyroid gland over here, which is known as goiter. So it is kind of really trying really hard to absorb enough amount of iodine. That is the thing. So deficiency of iodine leading to insufficient thyroid hormone production would be leading to what? Something that is known as goiter. Okay, so iodine is less. Since iodine is less, thyroid hormone is being produced very less, which is why someone has what? A disease that is known as goiter. So you have to remember the name of diseases. There it was dwarfism, gigantism. Over here you are talking about goiter, my dear children. So the two main thyroid hormones are thyroxine and triiodothyronin. Please remember the names. It helps in metabolic regulation, all your metabolic activities, my dear children. For formation of this hormone, you need iodine. And iodized salt is an effective way. So you should be taking iodized salt, and if iodine deficiency is there, you have thyroid hormone production to be really, really less, then you might have goiter as well later on. Cool. Now this is given in your NCERT, each and everything, so please learn it. Okay, please give special reference to it. Just a second. Okay. Now adrenal glands. Adrenal glands, they are, as I said, on the top of the kidneys. This is the kidney. On the top of it, you have adrenal glands. Now, in adrenal glands, there are two regions. One is the outer region, which is known as adrenal cortex, and the other one is the inner region, which is known as adrenal medulla. So the inner layer of adrenal gland is known as adrenal medulla. It produces adrenaline and noradrenaline. Again, very important hormones. Adrenaline and noradrenaline are also known as fight or flight hormones. Fight or flight hormone, as in either fight or basically run away. So during this situation, for example, there is a bear in front of you. Okay, at this point of time, your adrenal glands would be releasing adrenaline, such that what happens, basically your heart rate, it increases way too much. Okay, you feel panicky. Why? Because adrenaline is being released. So you know one function, adrenaline is going to act on the heart, increase its heart rate and things like that. Why does it do? I already told you, heart has to pump blood. What blood? Oxygenated blood. If it pumps oxygenated blood throughout different parts of our body, wherever it is needed, there will be enough amount of energy to run away. That is why adrenaline is being released. So some people fight with it, some people they run away with it, with that energy being produced. So this is why it is known as flight or fight hormone. So adrenaline is also known as epinephrine, children. It causes both vasoconstriction and vasodilation. What do you mean by vasoconstriction? Basically, if there is a blood vessel which is like this, you are making it narrower. You are making it narrower. This is known as vasoconstriction. And if you are making the blood vessel dilated, this is known as vasodilation, my dear children. Why do you think vasoconstriction or vasodilation happens? So for example, I do not need much amount of blood going to my, or let's say energy going to be produced in my stomach, because I want to run away as of now. I want the energy to be directed to my muscle cells. So at this point of time, the blood vessels which are going to the stomach will be constricted. The other one where I need more amount of blood, it will be dilated. So that is why vasodilation and vasoconstriction is important, and that is what adrenaline does. Now noradrenaline primarily induces vasoconstriction, leading to increased blood pressure and redirecting the blood flow to areas like muscles and brain. The same thing, almost same thing, but not entirely the same. Okay, and they increase the heart rate. You can remember it as together. Okay, it increases the heart rate, the blood pressure, everything. So when it increases the heart rate, suppose this is your heart is pumping blood to the blood vessels. Obviously, if it pumps really hard, it will be putting pressure on the walls, and this is known as blood pressure. So it will increase the blood pressure as well. Okay, now if you talk about the cortex region, this is about medulla, right? Adrenal cortex is responsible for cortisol, which is stress hormone, aldosterone, which is responsible for maintenance of the blood pressure, and also the sex hormones which are being released in our body, for example testosterone and stuff like that. Estrogen, testosterone being produced by adrenal cortex. Cool. So this again is not very much important for you to remember. This is very much important. Remember this medulla thing. Okay, and remember the position, it is pair of small, it is always pair. Okay, it's a pair of small triangular shaped endocrine gland located at the top of each kidneys. Now comes our next guy, that is what, my champions. Okay, this is known as pancreas, and pancreas, as I said, it has both endocrine and exocrine function, which is why it is known as an heterocrine gland. Now this heterocrine gland releases two very important hormones. One is insulin and the other one is glucagon. Okay, gluca is gone, you can remember like that. So what happens is that insulin is the one that will be taking all the glucose in our blood. So for example, glucose molecules are running in our blood and they're like, yay, we are having a good time over here. Insulin hormones goes and act on the glucose molecules and take them all together, bind them to form something that is known as glycogen. When this happens, the blood sugar level is controlled. Otherwise, what is happening? Basically, the glucose molecules are running freely. Our blood glucose level is increased. That is why we say we have diabetes. Okay, that's when we have not, because just once it happened, because it's a general thing that happens every single time. So that's when you call it as diabetes. That is a condition that happens over there. Now, on the other hand, if, for example, I starved myself for like 5 days. At this point of time, not 5 days, 2 days. At this point of time, my glucose which was being there, the blood, it is being utilized. The amount of glucose which is left back, it is being utilized. Now I want glucose, otherwise I won't be able to survive, because glucose is needed in the process of respiration, right? For the production of energy. So I need glucose. Where will I get it? I'll say that the glycogen which was stored, it should be broken down back to the glucose, and this is done by the glucagon. In this way, I am giving myself enough amount of glucose. So this is opposite in function. Insulin basically takes the glucose and converts into glycogen. Glycogen basically breaks down to form glucose again with the help of glucagon. So basically during starvation and stuff like that, during fasting, during starvation, always remember it's the glucagon that is active, and that is the one that will be breaking down things back for me to survive. Whereas this is the opposite thing that is happening over there. Works. Chalo. And with that we have completed, but I have to tell you one more thing, that is ovaries and testes. So ovaries are responsible for two very important things. One is for production of what? The sex hormones. That is, okay, I should be writing it properly over here. So ovaries and testes. So they both produce hormones, which is over here what? Estrogen, progesterone. Okay, over here in testes you have androgens, okay, and in androgens, the famous among androgens is what? Testosterone. These are the hormones being produced by the ovaries and the testes. Now apart from this, they are also responsible for secondary sexual characters. For example, development of breasts and things like that. Here also testes is also responsible for secondary sexual characters such as development of beard and stuff like that. Okay, so this is very much important. They are also, okay, they are also endocrine glands. Even though they have other function, they are organs, they are also acting like endocrine glands. So over here you have to label of all of them. So I can say one is pituitary. So over here hypothalamus and pituitary will be there, okay, or pineal gland could also be there, but they won't give a picture like this. They would give a proper picture where obviously you won't be asked to mention this because this is kind of complicated. The brain region they never give. Okay, over here you have this, that is your thyroid. This is your thymus. This will be your adrenal glands. This is pancreas, which should not be here. It should be apparently here, but okay, it's pancreas. And then you have the ovary, and then you have the testes. This is not a great picture, but just for your reference, I was saying the questions could also come like this with in reference to the picture that is given in your NCERT. So go refer the picture that is given in your NCERT. What is the labeling over there? Mentioned the labelings. What you can do is, okay, put some sticky notes on them. Okay, just small sticky notes, and then write it by your own later on. Okay, it will help you recollect things much better. So I think with that we have completed the chapter that is control and coordination, and we have completed both plants and animals. So big kudos to you guys, my dear children. In between even I got distracted because you know I just have a camera in front of me and I'm just talking, but still I think I was able to explain everything. If you think you have any doubt that I can resolve, definitely put it down in the comment section. I'm here to just do that. Okay, whatever help if you need from me, I would be definitely doing that for you guys. Okay, and also remember there's one more help that we can do, that is there is Diksha's Scholastic Aptitude Test, which is basically a test that would help you analyze what career would be the best for you. So how does it work? There will be a 60-minute concept based lecture followed by an aptitude test, and then there will be a one-on-one counseling session. After the counseling, in the counseling session, the counselor would be telling you the best stream that would be good for you, and then probably if you want, you can go ahead with it. So if you're someone who is interested in that, you can find the link in the description box. Click on that and you would be able to find it there. Cool. So that's all, my champions. If you think that this particular video was useful, if you think that this video would be useful for you to revise things, definitely do not forget to subscribe to our channel, and do not forget to like and leave a comment. Bye bye children, take care, you're going to do so good.